Good evening. I'd like to call the special meeting of Board of Selectmen. Actually, it's not a special meeting. It's a public informational meeting. I'd like to welcome everybody tonight. I'm Joe Mazza, First Selectman. The purpose of the meeting is to get public input on the proposed trail from the Adams School to the Lake School and to Timberlands. The agenda is very short. That's not to say that the meeting is going to be short. It depends on you. It's your meeting, really. The purpose of the meeting, like I said, is to get your public input. After I leave the podium, I'm going to call upon the engineering department, our town engineer Jim Portley, to give us a very brief presentation of the concept of this trail. And basically what the concept is the route that we're proposing and nothing more. We really have no design, and the reason we have no design is because we haven't had any public input. And we'll have public input after this meeting and maybe subsequent meetings. And Jim will also explain to you where the funding is coming from and how much funding has been allocated to this project. So after Jim's presentation, it's basically an open mic to get your input. I just want to remind everybody we're all friends here, and okay, and we're going to remain friends at the end of the meeting. So, Jim, the floor is yours. Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Give you a quick, I'm going to turn out the lights so you can see the screen better. Okay, the path, it was chosen, the name Nut Plains Path, because of the long section, what is known as the Nut Plains. I apologize. Is that working? Is that, you hear me now? No. How's that one? No. Which one? The small one. This. You can see I'm very experienced at this. Okay. Is that better? Yeah, good. All right. Nut Plains Path. Where did it start? Okay. Back about 3 years ago, Mark, would you give me the first slide? We got a petition from the residents on Tupelo Lane, Oxbow, Nut Plains West, looking for a path for their kids to walk down to the school, Adams School. They all had interest in having them walk rather than ride the bus every day. Why did they send that petition to the Board of Selectmen? It goes back to the 2002 transportation plan that was adopted by the town. There was a study group set up that reflected all the people of Guilford. I think there must have been 20 people on that study group, and they developed this 2002 transportation plan. It was subsequently adopted by the Board of Selectmen, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the Police Commission. It became the blueprint for transportation, whether that was road improvements, sidewalk improvements, whatever. And that has been what we've been working with for the last now 15 years. Consequence of this, we've extended Hubbard Road. You probably all remember we made the connection between Route 77 and Long Hill. We improved Flag Marsh Road. We extended New England Road from where it terminated at the corner, Old New England, and extended that to West Lake Avenue. We've also made other improvements, and I can go into that, but that just carries on. But this is the blueprint for our transportation plan. Part of that transportation plan identified desire to have neighborhood walking paths to schools, commercial centers, and so forth. Two of the areas that were identified, and will be part of this plan here, was the area around the Adams School. That these were circles drawn around centers of population where they would feel people would want to walk down to the center of what they considered the cultural center of their community. In this case, it was Adams School. There's also an area up on near the Guilford Lake School. Again, circles where those people who lived in the area could walk to the school rather than get the kids in the car, drive down, a quarter mile and another quarter mile and they'd be at school. They wanted to, as part of this plan, reestablish the habits of people in the past, where people would get out and walk. They also talk in this plan about interconnecting certain areas, having paths that would connect, paths for both pedestrian use and bicycle use. And this is again, there was a lot of discussions that went into this, and it was the source of a lot of time put in, and it was, again, adopted by the town. What you see on this slide here is the path. At the lower section of it is the Adams School, that circle. That's basically where the Adams School is. Its path is to follow State Street up to the intersection of State Street, Little Meadow Road, and Nut Plains Road. At that point, the path would go off to the east, going up Nut Plains Road to the intersection with Goose Lane, and then turn at that point and go up Nut Plains Road all the way to North Madison Road. The point at that time, when it got to North Madison Road, the path would cross North Madison Road with a crossing, and then follow the North Madison Road to connect to the existing sidewalk that was constructed about 10 years ago when they were building the homes on North Madison Road. And the developer, Joe Russo at the time, put that sidewalk in at the request of the town to, again, start the process of making these walkways. I talked about before, the first initiation of these walking paths was from the people that lived up on Tupelo Lane and on Oxbow and Nut Plains West. After we received that petition, the following year, a petition was received by the Board of Selectmen from the residents of Coventry, who were requesting that the sidewalk that existed on North Madison Road that went from the Guilford Lake School westerly towards and connected to Valley Shore Drive, that sidewalk be extended over to Coventry so they could too enjoy the neighborhood concept of having a walking route to the center of their cultural community. So those two petitions started the process going. Following that, the town has tried to, and they did actually receive funding for the State Street sidewalk, was talked about, and it was debated, and it was held off until certain issues were resolved. But the idea was never given up. In the 2015 budget, $140,000 was appropriated in a bond for construction of that walk. And that money still is in the bond today and is available to defray the costs of this project. Back 3 years ago, the town applied for and got what they call a LOTSIP grant. A LOTSIP is a program that's run by the state where they provide funding for improvement to local roads. We got a LOTSIP grant, approximately $1.2 million, and rebuilt Westlake Avenue from Route 1 up to the north Branford line. That project came out well. We brought the project in under time and under budget, and established our reputation in the region for completing those projects. We also, subsequent to that, requested funding for improvements to Nut Plains Road. Nut Plains is, especially from North Madison Road down to Goose Lane, is considered a thoroughfare because of the volume of traffic. I think there's a 2,300 average daily traffic count on that road. It is heavily used. It is an older road. It has some drainage, but it has a lot of drainage problems. There's a lot of places along that road where the drainage systems are substandard. The pavement, every winter we have to spend a lot of money patching it. There was a lot of blind curves, and there really is no consistent geometry, either vertically or horizontally to that road, that you would consider a safe road by modern standards. So we applied for and got on the list of future projects that would be funded under the state LOTSIP program. Last year we were advised that we would be designated for the 2017-18 year for funding of Nut Plains Road for that project, for the North Madison Road to Goose Lane section for reconstruction. We asked to see if we could extend that funding to go further to the south, to follow Nut Plains down from Goose Lane down to State Street, but the classification of road, it doesn't fit the proper classification road. The number of cars on that section of road is significantly lower than the upper section. So but we did get, and we have received approval from the DOT to proceed with discussions on the design and the funding of that project. Subsequent to that basically designation as an acceptable project, we inquired as to whether or not a sidewalk or a path would be eligible for funding. DOT has advised that under their Complete Streets program, they would fund the sidewalk, pathway, whatever you want to call it, from North Madison Road down to Goose Lane. That opened up the idea here of the Nut Plains pathway. That funding would be 100% state, would cost the town nothing. The project then went to the next step. We applied for and received funding, not received funding, but we received tentative approval on a transportation alternative program, which means, aside from just building roads, the federal government is trying to promote other alternatives to transportation, and pedestrian projects fit that category. Pedestrian projects, trailways, any kind of things any kind of transportation project that doesn't fit the normal pavement, drainage, curbing kind of formula. So at that point, we put together the plan you see before you in concept of going from the Adams School, incorporating that sidewalk which has previously been funded, a section of sidewalk along Nut Plains Road that would go from basically State Street, Little Meadow intersection, go along North Plains Road down to Goose Lane, build that section, connect it to the sidewalk that would be built under the LOTSIP program, and then ultimately complete the pathway along North Madison Road from Coventry over to the existing sidewalk. So in total, as I view it, we have 4 sections of walk that we have to construct to connect to the 5th one. In total, that pathway would be about 2.6 miles. It's quite a distance. It would allow access, pedestrian access, not only to the schools, to the Nut Plains Park, to the dog park, allow access to the golf course, timberlands, and with a minor adjustment in the future over to the Guilford Preserve, the East Guilford Preserve. It would be kind of a pedestrian bicycle path that would connect that whole center of town. Now, one of the aspects of the transportation alternative plan is that it be designed to be handicap accessible, which you all are aware of. We have every sidewalk you see now put in these days. We put the handicap accessible pads for ease of access onto the sidewalk. But it would also have to have some component that would allow or promote bicycle use. Rather than making a wide path, we've decided to approach it by painting what they call sharrows on the pavement. If Mark, you could drag that up. This is the alignment. But sharrows are that symbol that just popped up and disappeared. It's a bicycle that gets painted. If you're familiar with Whitfield Street, these sharrows were painted on the pavement starting south of the green. They go all the way down to the docks. They're there to kind of advise motorists that they have to share the road with other users, bicyclists. In reviewing many practices over the last few years, and a lot of talk about traffic calming, two things help with traffic calming. One is having pedestrians, especially on sidewalks, walking along roads, and other users of the road, safe users of the road, tends to calm traffic a little bit. One of the biggest complaints I've heard in discussing people talking about nut planes and any road in town, by the way, is that people travel too fast. So one of the aspects that we would like to do in doing this project, as well as providing a pathway and then providing these sharrows, which is a requirement of the TA program, is also to provide some traffic calming. Though that gives you a background of where we are today, we have not come into a full design. Mark, if you want to flip back to the section. We've decided, though, that we think it's in the best interest of the town to follow the west side of State Street from the Adams School up to Nut Plains, and then follow all the way up the west side of Nut Plains to North Madison Road. There's only one crossing that will be needed at State Street, road crossing. There are no other roads coming into Nut Plains from the west, so it would be a continuous path. We wouldn't have lots of interruptions to the path. Yes, well, there's driveways there, which we will have to deal with in the design, but there's no road crossings until you get, again, from the intersection with State and Little Meadow all the way up to North Madison Road. There are no other intersections until you get up to North Madison Road. So it tends to be a safer road. Now that path or that section of road will require a lot of design considerations, but we feel in looking at it that we certainly have dealt with many other roads that have had similar difficult design challenges, but we feel that we can come up with a design that will be acceptable to the people who live along the route. I know it's all when you have any change, people really get upset about what they think is going to be a great change to the environment in which they live. I have a letter here from Maureen O'Connor, who lives on the road, and she's, and I won't read it, but I basically will tell you, she's opposed because she doesn't want to see change. She doesn't want to see trees cut down or any kind of change that she feels will impact the houses in that area. Well, we've rebuilt a lot of the roads in this town over the last 20 or 30 years. And I will tell you, we just completed Podunk. If you ever have a chance, go right up Podunk Road from Clabberton Hill Road going north up Torkett Road. It's a road that's, I think, almost universally is applauded by the residents who live along there. We have faced some real serious challenges. We changed some grades, we changed some horizontal geometry, as well as vertical geometry. We put a whole drainage system in there that didn't exist before, and we finished it off in a way I think that is, in the, at least the commentary I have received from the residents, very, very pleasant and pleasing to them. It's retained the country or the rural character that existed before. And I think you could say the same, whether it's Flag Marsh Road, Flat Meadow Road, New England Road, whatever, Westlake Avenue. You're our neighbors, and we've made every effort to, when we design these roads, to accommodate you as part of that process. Tonight, we're here talking about just the concept, though. I don't want to go into the design or the specifics, only to say, though, we would want to go up that west side. To take that pathway and jump it from one side of the road to the other would be, I think, folly. You know, you're putting all the pedestrians in jeopardy when you start crossing roads. We know what that entails. So I think that's about all I want to say. Let me just check my notes. Talk so fast, I think I just might have missed something. Okay. What I would like to is just some of these responses to that flyer.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it. Well, thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Let's put the lights on.
Yeah.
Okay, Jim, thank you. All right, it's your turn. One request I would ask, two requests, is that when you come up to the podium, please give us your name and address for the record so the clerk can record your name and address. And please, we have a large audience, a large crowd here tonight, which is great because we want to hear from as many people as possible. Please keep your remarks to 3 minutes so everyone could be heard. Okay, who's first? You had your hand up first, okay.
You want me to come up here?
Yes, ma'am. This mic is for the crowd. This is for the video.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about it, just the way I did it.
Okay.
It's all
Thank you.
yours. 3 minutes, please.
Yeah, I'll keep it to that. I'm Liz O'Connor, Maureen's third daughter, Maureen O'Connor, who Jim mentioned her letter. And I just respectfully want to say that it was slightly misrepresented and that she's not opposed to change. What she's opposed to is changing the country aspect of Nut Plains Road. She's not opposed to upgrading and that sort of thing. But and I have her letter if anyone would like to read it. I'm happy to pass it around. That's really basically what I wanted to say is that, you know, I will tell you, I rode my bicycle back and forth from our house, which is just north of Dome Avenue, to Adams School. And I don't see many people doing that. I'd love to hear those figures, how many people really want to do that. And if it's considered a seasonal road, I'm curious as to why we're doing it for the school systems. It's just questions, not being oppositional. But again, if anyone wants to see the letter, I'm happy to give it to anyone. Yeah, if you could just make a note of that.
Hi, Melissa Shaw, 86 Russo Drive. I live in the Valley Shores neighborhood, and I've lived there for 10 years. We are part of the Lakes District, and we've had kids there at Lakes for 11 years. In the neighborhood of about 60 families, I can say at least 10 families have taken the opportunity to walk to school. Not every day, but at least 10 families have taken that opportunity because of the sidewalk that is currently there because of when Russo built on North Madison. So that's pretty good odds right there. I also know Lake School has a Ride to School night, Ride to School Day in honor of Earth Day in April. Last year there was about 30 kids that rode or walked to school. And that's without any kind of sidewalks. So if you take in the amount of people just in the Valley Shores neighborhood that have taken that opportunity to use that sidewalk that we have to walk to school, which in my opinion is nothing more country than that. I love that opportunity that I can take to walk my kids to school. I also do ride my bike with my son. My son and I went down just on Saturday to the library for the book fair, the book sale there. There was 2 cars that felt that they needed to beep at us. We were riding one in front of the other, felt that they need to beep at us to let us know that they're there. He did great, I mean, completely off to the side. It's not really conducive to safety. And to be able to have that pathway open more, where more people were able to take advantage and connect this section, the lake section, to the green, that would just be amazing. And you would see the numbers increase. I firmly believe that just by what it did with Valley Shores neighborhood and opening it up to Lake School.
Thank you.
Thanks.
If you want, you can start lining up on the side here.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Lavelle. I live at 271 Nut Plains Road, the west side of Nut Plains. When I moved in a year ago, August, the first thing I did, coming from a condo owning my new house, was to put in a new mailbox. I thought it was awesome. So I got one of the nice posts and everything. And the guy, my neighbor came over and he goes, "Why are you doing that? You're an idiot." What do you mean I'm an idiot? "Oh, every year cars go flying off this blind corner and take out the mailboxes." And I came a little bit late because this place was hard to find. I thought it was a city hall, whatever. But I didn't hear the discussion of how wide it's going to be. But I did get a flyer on my door that said 10 feet and that rock walls were going to be removed and that old oak trees were going to be removed, 2 of which I have that are at least probably 36 if not 40 inches across. The road surface to the bottom of my grass, where just beyond the rock wall where I could mow without mowing over the rocks, is about 3 feet from the road surface. So that means that we're now going to push from the road surface out into my property, removing my rock wall, removing my 2 oak trees, and then still have an additional 3 feet slope that somehow just will end in my grass somewhere. Hopefully it's not my leach fields, but it probably will be. And then I have the cars in the wintertime that are now, instead of bouncing off my rock wall and hitting the mailboxes, they're going to either crash into me or my future children. So, I don't know. I get a little shaken up public speaking. But, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, and country, I'm from Edmond, Oklahoma. I walked to school across a cow field. I don't know what country we were talking about here. But this is not Goshen, Connecticut. This is Guilford, downtown by the Green. So you can have all this anecdotal nonsense. We can go back and forth. But I want a traffic study. I'm in analytics. I want a traffic study. I want to know the bidding process. I want to know who's going out, who's doing this process, and who's applying for it. And I want an environmental impact study. All right? I can't even go to the beach if they're piping plovers. The beaches are all closed. There's got to be something that we got to look at in this as well. I know Fisher cats are a nuisance, but one of which lives in my roll. So, I don't know. There's just more to be said than just some anecdotal letters or references of here or there, maps that are so zoomed out you can't even tell what's what. I mean, we got to have something a little bit more impactful to the people that are actually going to lose land from this. So that's all I ask. Thank you.
My name's John Wigmans. I live 490 State Street. What I want to talk about is the definition of a pathway and a sidewalk. We're getting mixed messages. A pathway by federal rules is 10 feet wide, has to have a 2 feet grass stanchion between that. We have many houses on State Street and probably some on the other houses that if you put a 10-foot wide place there, people will have people walking on their front steps. So the problem is a sidewalk and a pathway. A pathway has definite rules in their federal rules. And the other thing is that of the 21 houses north of I-95 on State Street, one house did not sign a petition. We put a petition in to try to find out to do something else and not do this project. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Elizabeth Everts, 420 Nut Plains Road. In regards to the proposed 6-foot wide bicycle path running the whole length of Nut Plains Road, please be advised that I am very much opposed to this project. I have always lived at 420 Nut Plains Road, and the very large maple trees along the front of my property are more than 200 years old. These trees were all planted by my ancestors. If the bike lane plan goes through, it would be a sad day to see these beautiful large trees destroyed. These trees, along with my large stone wall, represent the historic beauty of my neighborhood. My 3 spruce trees, which were planted by my dad and his dad, would be sacrificed. In addition, you cannot possibly encroach on the Nut Plains Cemetery. Back in 1949, when Les Dudley was selectman, he was in favor of straightening Nut Plains Road. My dad, Clarence Everts, did not want to see the large pepperidge tree destroyed, and Les Dudley did not want to have the large white oak removed. These two trees are located on the strip of land between Old Nut Plains Road and the current Nut Plains Road. I think my dad sold that piece of land to the town of Guilford for $200, and that portion of the road was then built on the west side of those trees. It was important to save those two trees, which are still there today. Hopefully, they will always be there. A 6-foot wide path along Nut Plains Road is definitely not a good fit for my neighborhood. Therefore, I am against this plan, even though I do walk on Nut Plains Road almost every day. Thank you.
I'm Helen Higgins. I live at 652 Nut Plains Road, which is the Uriah Parmalee House, 1809. Uriah Parmalee's memorial is on the town green. This proposal by town engineer Jim Portley is a useless exercise that emerges from no comprehensive plan, no stakeholder input, and unnecessarily creates anxiety and acrimony for Nut Plains residents. What is it? There's no planning or stakeholder input involved in this pathway. And this is an essential piece of the context-sensitive design standards that have been adopted by the Connecticut Department of Transportation over the past many years. The proposal for a 6-foot path has been mentioned. That is not a path, that's just barely a sidewalk. A path is 10 feet, it's a two-way path. 6-foot path, bikers do not go on the path. The proposed path runs along a country road with trees, stone walls, 19 documented historic buildings and sites, 19. State Historic Preservation Office can review the impacts of such a path on historic resources, especially those eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. There are 5 houses on that stretch that are now on the State Register of Historic Places. Those houses are most likely eligible for National Register. My house is eligible for National Register, and we will have a state review under Section 106 of the adverse impacts of this trail path on my house and other houses in the area. My house happens to be on the side of the street that this path will go. And Jim and I have met. He's very kindly tried to draw something that would not really impinge on our property, but it is an urbanization of a country road, and my husband and I object to it. Question is, who wants it? Apparently no one from Nut Plains Road. Who needs it? We don't have an analysis, as this gentleman has said. This looks like federal money that can help do road improvements, and then we get a path out of it. And I think that what we can do next is say no to this and hope that no means no to the selectmen, because I'm noticing that no doesn't mean no to the selectmen with the Greenway path and so on. And I think that's a really important message. You know, if we come out today and say no, I don't want to see this go on for another year. Thank you.
Shirley Gerioni, 199 Whitfield Street. I'm speaking on behalf of the Guilford Preservation Alliance tonight. They are not in opposition to this project, but have several questions that need to be answered and comments. First comment is that we're in complete agreement with Helen Higgins' recommendation that there be a stakeholders committee working with the town engineer, and that should have representatives from the tree advisory, environmental community, landscape architects, tree advisory, etc. The questions are, there seems to be a question about what constitutes a pavement. My understanding was it was 5 feet. Is that correct, Jim? 6 feet, okay. The other question is, Who would maintain this pathway? The town? Okay, so does that mean snow removal in the winter?
We have, one of the aspects of the...
Jim, why don't you get up there? Okay.
One of the aspects of the transportation alternatives program is the town would have to take on the responsibility of snow removal. And I've discussed this with the selectmen. We have presently personnel are engaged in maintenance of the open space we have, the Guilford Preserve, Timberlands, and so forth. If we were to buy a piece of equipment, now most of that activity goes on in the spring and the summer and in the fall. Wintertime, their activities decline. We would try to get a piece of equipment, and that would be easy enough to do, that would have a snow thrower attachment to the equipment, and then the town could take over snow removal of this, and that would be a requirement of the transportation alternative funding.
Okay, so is there provision in the budget to cover this expense?
This is a public information. We haven't got to that point yet.
But there'd have to be.
There would
because
have
it's
to
an
be. There would
increased,
have to, yes.
Increased workload.
Yes.
Okay. And then if it's not cleared and there's an accident, what's the town's liability?
Just like on any other, just like on roads or anything else. We have responsibility for maintaining the roads. This would be the same level of responsibility.
Okay. And are you open to a stakeholders committee, members of the road, residents
Personally, I have
of the
no
road?
problem with that. That's really a decision of the Board of Selectmen.
Because that would be a much more inclusive process.
Well, and we
and
get to that
project.
point. You know, that certainly is something.
Okay. There is a path that you created in front of Cox School. Are we talking about the same type of path?
The Cox School, that was an existing sidewalk, asphalt sidewalk. We replaced it.
You replaced it?
Yes.
Okay.
That was just regular sidewalk maintenance. Same thing, though.
But it's concrete now?
Yes.
Okay, because I've heard good reports about that.
I've had
that
so
it
have I.
follows the topography of the land, but it doesn't seem to be 6 feet. Is it 6
5.
feet? Okay. Could this be 5?
It could, if it needed to be. I think from information I got today that it could be, but I think the 5 or 6, it's really, I mean, that's kind of such a small point. And it's either put it in or don't put it in. That's my.
And
my
you didn't
thought.
say how much funding you received in total for this project.
Oh, I did. I said the section from Nut Plains, from North Madison Road down to Goose Lane would be 100% funded.
How much is that?
Well, we have to go through the full design. You don't get those numbers.
They didn't
until
give you a set amount to go by.
No, it was 1.4 million. It was part of it. But at that point, we hadn't fully explored all the sidewalk. We had just gone in for the roadway improvements and the drainage.
Okay. 'Cause I know
The funding
this-
we had under the TA project was 1.4 million. That included the whole path from Adams all the way up to Guilford Lakes.
Oh.
So we would need to use all that money because that segment, it's a 5,100 foot segment from Nut Plains from State to Goose Lane. We wouldn't have to spend that, so it would be less than that.
Less than 1.4 million?
Yeah,
Could the funds be used for any other projects?
no,
Just that specific
yes,
project?
just specific project.
Okay, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
consideration.
Hi, Nora Beckwith Robinson. I reside at 911 Nut Plains Road. I'm a lifelong resident of Guilford. In fact, my ancestors were some of the original settlers of this town. I have lived on Nut Plains Road for 17 years. I chose this house because it captured all that New England and Old Guilford, the antique homes and barns, the old cemetery, and the stone walls. Nut Plains Road is one of the last remaining country lanes south of Route 80. It was constructed on deer paths and wagon ruts. It's curvy, shaded with ancient oak and maple trees, and in the most part, quiet except for the morning and evening commuting traffic. The construction of a pathway between Adams School and Guilford Lakes would last years, disrupt lives, take down trees, fences, stone walls, cut into private property, compromise inland wetlands, require blasting, destroy history, and turn a winding country lane into a speedway shortcut between State Street and North Madison Road. And I do walk this road every day with my dog, winter, spring, summer, fall. I see some of you people here, and the main issue with this road is the speeding and distracted driving. And I have to agree with the gentleman about his mailbox. Mine gets taken down every couple of years, and I live in a straightaway. This past summer, on a sunny Sunday afternoon, a gentleman took out the telephone pole across the street from our house at 5:45, speeding and distracted. So it doesn't matter if you're on a corner or a straightaway, the issue is the speeding on Nut Plains Road. Now I lost my place. I don't feel a federal grant for $1.4 million would hardly cover the cost of construction, maintenance, and the disruption of the lives of the residents of Nut Plains Road. I am completely against this proposed new pathway. It will destroy the beauty and history of Nut Plains Road as we know. Thank you.
My name is Susan Clark, and I live at 678 Nut Plains Road for 12 years. It so happens I own 2 of those 17 historic buildings. So I have many, many hard questions that are practical questions, historic questions, environmental questions. There seem to be a lot of assumptions built into who's going to use this and how many. I find it pretty hard to believe kids are going to walk to school in January and February. And anyway, many questions. I won't go into all those. I'll save those, hoping to get the chance to ask them later. But I want to echo the comments of the preceding speaker, Ellen, and many others. I know on my property I'll lose at least 10 major trees, just for starters. And you think that's not going to change the character of the landscape and the road? I could go on, but I will not. I just want to go on record saying I have many, many hard questions. I'm in the natural resource management business. I'm happy to get into all the details. And I want to go on record saying finally that I'm opposed to what's being proposed. It's as though we're going to build it and they're going to come.
Donald Cottrell, 9 Garrison Drive, family of 4. Question, Jim, if I may. Nut Plains Road is paved?
Yes.
It wasn't long ago, correct?
I think it was paved in 1960 or something.
So it's evolved a little bit over the years. Cool. We're walkers in our house. We have friends down Little Meadow, about a half mile away. We went to a party, kids' party one day. The 4 of us. My wife's now banned us from walking on Little Meadow. There are no sidewalks. Less than 30 hours ago, a car overturned on Little Meadow. Now I know why she banned us. We would walk a lot of places if we could. So in general, I just like to say I support the idea of what the town's doing, looking to find more walkways. I do believe a lot of the concerns here are valid, and I hope they're explored. I don't mean to say I'm totally rah-rah for any pathway, but I am encouraged by what we're looking into here. Thank you.
I'm Julius Fries at 50 Tupelo. This is the 4th time in 4 years I've stood before the selectmen to talk about this pathway. To say this is a frustrating procedure is an understatement. It appears to me that the selectmen are just trying to wear down the residents of Upper State Street who oppose almost 100% this sidewalk and just wear us down by attrition so we don't object to the project. Virtually all of those homeowners have signed petitions against this project. They do not want their property disturbed. They do not want to bear any possible legal and financial burden that the project may cause to them, particularly as they don't view the project as very necessary. I think they reflect the very same sentiments that the Guilford homeowners expressed about the failed shoreline pathway program a few months ago. In addition to the State Street homeowners, another 75 Guilford residents have signed a petition against this project. The fact is, this is simply not an essential project. We already have a number of wonderful pathways and walkways for our residents to enjoy. Very few residents of Guilford will benefit from this pathway. The federal government's only $20 trillion in debt. The state's financial house is in complete disarray, and there are likely resulting drastic cuts in its subsidies to towns. I believe that this situation demands that our government officials tighten their belts and only spend taxpayer money on very vital and essential projects. This pathway does not strike me as a vital town project. $1.5 million spent on a pathway that begins nowhere significant and ends nowhere significant does not seem very essential to me. I know that some will argue that this money is going to be awarded to somebody, so why shouldn't we, Guilford, take it? But I submit to you that very thinking is the reason why America is getting itself in deep financial trouble and possible financial ruin. We in Guilford should be better than that. Our officials pride themselves on fiscal responsibility. Well, here's a chance for you people to step up and lead by example. Let's donate the money to the various hurricane disaster relief programs. These are indeed essential programs, and I don't think anybody in Guilford would object to that. This is far more important than the proposed pathway. If this was not possible, could we not redirect this money to more important local Guilford projects, like maybe paying down on the Long Hill Road program, which I have been told by a few people is well over budget? It seems to me, unfortunately, that the selectmen have already made up their mind to approve this project. There are just so many more important projects that need to be done, and this pathway is certainly not one of them. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Peter Yu. I live at 51 Nut Plains Road with my wife Jocelyn. Many of you will recognize her. She rides her bicycle. It's hot pink. She has matching clothing. She has a seat on the back for one of the babies. She's got a trailer in back for 2 additional babies. She's at home right now putting the 4th baby to sleep, as many of our friends who support this are. There are many of the children who attend Guilford Lake School are right now at home with their parents being put to sleep, so that's why they're not here. I will say that my children, Carolina, James, Sebastian, and Sasha, we enjoy living at the foot of Nut Plains Road. All my kids either do or will attend Guilford Lake School and eventually Adams and the other schools in our area. We want to commend the Board of Selectmen for the foresight to engage this highly difficult and timely conversation for this area with some sensitivity that's appropriate. And my family and I and everyone have spoken to about this project are strongly in favor of the trail or sidewalk, or whatever we call it, for 3 major reasons. Number 1, safety. When we moved to Nut Plains Road, it was our plan. We thought we would be able to walk to town. We thought we would be able to walk to our neighbors' houses. I thought it would be safe to have my children wait by the mailbox for the bus. Short answer, it's not. The cars are bigger, drivers are more distracted, roads without protected areas for pedestrians are not safe for families. Believe it or not, Guilford has had 5 pedestrian fatalities since 2010. That puts us on par for pedestrian fatality with New York City, Miami, and Detroit. You remember these cases. I'm a surgeon. I've taken care of these patients, and some of my patients live on my street. These accidents are preventable, and it's been shown by the U.S. Department of Transportation that sidewalks and other paths on the sides of roads decrease dramatically the risk of injury to pedestrians. Number 2, walkability for young families like mine is a tremendous factor in choosing a home and attracting young families to neighborhoods. We chose Nut Plains Road because we like the way it looks, we like the neighborhood, we like the people. And we thought we would be able to walk, and we thought we'd be able to have our children wait by the mailbox for the bus by themselves. But as it turns out, Guilford, though it has so much to offer, it would be so much greater if we could walk to town to get an ice cream. It would be great if our children could ride their bicycles to their friend's home rather than have to wait for mom to come home, put them in the van, strap them in, go 3 houses over to go to play. So, families that are moving to town ask questions like, where will we teach our kids to bike? Wouldn't it be great if we could walk to town when we needed some milk? Wouldn't it be great if I could ride my bike to the school to see my kid? It's such an important factor that there's actually now an online score for the walkability of every town. This contributes to home values. This contributes to the ability to attract young families to neighborhoods and to towns. Okay? Young families like sidewalks. They like being able to walk. Guilford needs to keep pace with attracting families that move to the area, if it wishes to do so. Increasing the sense of community. Sidewalks for neighborhoods, this is the third point, that are lucky enough to have them, are meeting places for socializing, seeing neighbors, for having a healthy lifestyle, which includes walking and safe bicycling, teaching kids to learn to ride a bike, and for kids to have a lemonade stand. Ultimately, we have the opportunity to do something very positive for our children and the children of generations to come, which is to give them a safer way to enjoy the beauty of Guilford and of Nut Plains Road and of State Street. How many more accidents do we have to have in Guilford? How many more pedestrian fatalities in order to prove this point? For the people who oppose the walking trail, if a child gets hurt on Nut Plains Road in front of my house, will you have the courage to look that child's parent in the eye, as I have done, and tell them what you think? That you oppose the sidewalk? Will your conscience really be square? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dan Ethier. I live on 34 North Madison Road. First, I'd like to thank the selectmen and town engineer for providing this forum for this discussion. Like the folks on Nut Plains Road, I share many of the same concerns that you do. I have a historic home. I have 3 oak trees out in front of my home that would probably fall victim to this project. But on the other hand, I also have a young family. My youngest daughter just started kindergarten at Lakes. So it really is nearly impossible to walk on North Madison Road up until you get to the sidewalk. So I do see a benefit to this project, but I would need more discussion on it and the details of it. There's a hill in front of my house as far as a fence, and just to see what it would look like before I could say I'm for it. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Good evening. Amy Sullivan, 55 Oxbow Lane. My neighborhood and the original neighborhoods, Tupelo, Golden Hill, Nut Plains West, are part of that circled area of a great place to start this path, and I still agree with that. Counting loosely in those collective neighborhoods, we have almost 25 kids, and if you drive by this corner of State Street and Nut Plains West on any morning around 7:30, you'll see 10 or so standing on the side of the road that could be walking to school. And I'm not silly enough to think that they would walk in snow, but certainly from August until December, and then in the spring they could walk instead of getting on a bus that stops to take them a quarter of a mile down the road. In the fall last year, due to some health issues, I spent a lot of time on foot walking to do some simple errands around town from my house. And I have to tell you, as an adult who is not a small person, I found it terrifying. I had to walk up in the woods. Cars would pass in both directions, veering all over the place. It was a terrifying experience, and to live that close to town, it was disappointing. It's a narrow road. It's been widened before, and I apologize, I'm not talking about the Nut Plains portion because I'm not as familiar with it. I have heard a few comments about not seeing a lot of kids biking or walking in the vicinity of our neighborhoods going to Adams, and my understanding from talking to lots of parents is it's simply not safe. I don't want my kids to do it. I barely want them to take my oldest to take the car and go that way, just because of all the traffic of pedestrians and people trying to share the road all on that narrow road. Additionally, to just getting to Adams, this will connect these neighborhoods to the sidewalk that leads all the way to the green and ultimately down to the ocean if you want to. It's great to see people out walking, young, old, 2 feet, 4 feet, whatever it takes. There's also great tennis courts at Adams and a very new hobby down there, pickleball, which I see every time I drive by, and it's packed. There's limited parking, and wouldn't it be great if people could grab their pickleball racket and walk down there instead of parking? There's no doubt in my mind that there's still a lot of work to do to get ready to potentially even think about this project. All I'm asking is that we keep doing the work and gather the information to potentially move this forward. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brooke Sheldon. I'm at 40 Nut Plains Road. I live in a house that was built in 1773 by one of the Everts family. And I value my old house, and we moved into it because I love the character of it. And we moved there 19 years ago, before we had kids. And then once we had kids, my perception of where I lived changed, because if I wanted to take my kids bike riding, I had to put their bikes in the back of the car and drive somewhere like Hammonasset, somewhere where I knew it was safe, that they could bike and feel comfortable. We couldn't go trick-or-treating in our neighborhood because it was too dangerous. So we would drive to a neighborhood that had sidewalks so we could go trick-or-treating. And, you know, I just wanted to say, you know, I live in an old house, I live on Nut Plains, and I'm thrilled with the idea of a sidewalk. I love the fact that it would connect the community in my area. A lot of people that I don't know, and people that I met when we had the big storm that brought down the trees, that knocked over the power lines and blocked the street, everybody came out of their houses, and I met all these people that I didn't even know lived in that area. And I feel like if there was a sidewalk, people would get out and would walk and would bike and would walk their dogs. I think it'd be fantastic. Now, I have kids, so maybe I'm biased in that direction, but I love to walk too. And when I want to walk, I get in the car, I drive to the green, and I walk on the sidewalks. So anyway, I just want to put a plug in and say I think it's a wonderful idea, and thank you guys. It's a lot of work in the face of a lot of dissension, so I just appreciate it.
Craig Mullett, 146 Tupelo Lane. I'd like to echo the thanks to the selectmen for considering this and for working to make Guilford a more walkable community. I think it's an asset for all in this town that we live in and that we love, and I think that in accordance with the 2002 development plan, the Nut Plains Path would be a wonderful addition to make Guilford more walkable. This is also a pathway which has got specific funding that won't cost the town in terms of its opportunity cost that we will lose if we don't move ahead within a reasonable amount of time. In fact, can I ask a question of clarification? What is the timeline, Jim, for that funding?
We have to sit down with the folks at the Department of Transportation. This public information meeting is an essential part of the planning of the project. We would have to sit down with the DOT and work out a schedule if we were to go forward. I think the funding would remain intact if we are progressing reasonably and looking to come up with a plan that would satisfy all the requirements of the program and all the requirements of the residents. So I don't think there's any jeopardy at this point of losing the funding. I think it's just something that we have to progress through.
Thanks, Jim, for clarifying. And I think it's in that spirit, certainly, that I would ask the people who are opposed to the plan tonight, who've expressed all of their reservations, which I sincerely can understand. If I was to have anything moved on my property, which has happened, I would feel concerned. But I think if we give enough time and enough input, and I certainly trust the town, if you look at the other projects that the town has done, the other sidewalk projects that the town has done on River Street and others, those have been excellently handled. They've certainly addressed all the needs of the residents, and they've increased the walkability of the town. I bike this road nearly every week, the exact route that Jim put up there. And I can tell you that in the past week, I've seen moms pushing strollers. I've seen numerous people walking, including some people who spoke vehemently opposed to the pathway today. And I would ask people to think about the fact of a minor disruption through this construction project, if it's sensitively handled, versus the major destruction of a loss of life of a pedestrian having to walk in the road when there is a solution that can be worked out with the town. And it may take time and it may take a lot of effort from individual homeowners working with the town to make sure that something can be sensitively handled and sensitively done. But I think this would be a tremendous asset for Guildford, and I'd certainly encourage the selectmen to move ahead with the process. Thank you.
Mike Michelay, 301 Willow Road. Jim, real quick, so if I'm to understand correctly, Nut Plains would be rebuilt as part of the cost, correct?
Yes, Nut Plains would be rebuilt in two sections. The section from Nut Plains from North Madison to Goose Lane would be rebuilt under the LOTSIP program. But in 2015 and then again 2017, the town approved issuance of bonds for the reconstruction of Podunk, Goose Lane, and Nut Plains. The next project we will do, since we did Podunk this past year, is Nut Plains, and that would be because of the LOTSIP program. We only have to do half of what we first estimated. We would rebuild Nut Plains from Goose Lane up to State Street.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm only 15 years in Guildford, so I'm not truly accepted, so to speak. But you did State Street was also redone in amongst a historic district and had some challenges, much like Nut Plains, correct?
Correct. We had hearings like this when we did State Street, and there was a
big hump in the middle, and yeah.
There was a protest from some groups who said that you shouldn't be rebuilt because, and this is just my remembrance of it, it was used to be called Crooked Hill Road. And there was someone who wanted to preserve that character. And I'll never forget Ann Weir, she's passed away, she's a wonderful lady, getting up and told this woman, "You gotta be crazy. I take my life in my hand every day to walk across the street to get my mail. You don't live there. You don't know what the hell you're talking about." And it was one of the most wonderful times I've ever heard.
Sorry, didn't mean to bring up that sidebar, but thank you. So my point being is that change is evolving. The street has evolved. State Street has evolved. It's not any worse for the wear, in my humble opinion. But again, I know that I am probably getting the stink eye for someone that is not living on the street and in the area. But as a father of three, kids go to lakes, a business owner here in town, riding my bike, et cetera, I support that we should be looking at this. I think the gist of tonight's meeting was that this is an open discussion. I know we're all divided, and there's some for, some against, but it sounds like that this is a conversation that's ongoing, and I hope everyone has open ears to that piece. I've been asked by a friend to read a letter, which I'll quickly do, and let him sort of speak his words. He couldn't be here tonight. He had to travel. But I just want to go on record with my support of a continued conversation and some kind of, figuring this out so that it doesn't truly impact the town in any negative way. But let me quickly read a letter from Sam Garretts. My name is Sam Garretts. I live at 290 North River Street. I have a sidewalk in front of my house, and it's used regularly both for folks who walk to town and for exercise. I'm glad it is there, and I take pride in shoveling it in the winter. It's a small, concrete way for me to do something for this town that I love. I apologize for not being able to attend in person, but I wanted to add my voice in strong support of the proposed Nut Plains path. Guildford is a wonderful place to live, but outside of downtown, it is not a safe place for pedestrians and cyclists. Our roads are narrow and windy, motorists typically do not obey speed limits, and they are increasingly distracted by their smartphones. This is a dangerous combination. State Street and Nut Plains are no exception to this, and the net result is that many Guildford residents fear for their safety when they attempt to walk, run, ride, or use these roads. We are literally putting our lives in the hands of motorists who may or may not see us. The proposed path mitigates a great deal of this risk and also connects two sections of town that are currently not accessible by any type of path. Imagine being able to walk, run, ride to the green, from the green to the timberlands. To me, a lot of the anger around the sidewalk and paths is misdirected. Until the advent of the automobile in the 1920s, all of the town streets and roads were safe for pedestrians and cyclists. The only danger was getting hit by a horse and buggy. It is the automobile's fault that our roads are now dangerous, and the town planners and concerned citizens are simply trying to reestablish safe routes for pedestrians and cyclists. I have a sidewalk in front of my house, and not because it is good for my health and my property values, but both of which are true, but because the town planners and leaders know that it's good for the community. As the selectmen already know, the Nut Plains path will be spectacularly good for the community, and it should be constructed. Thank you for your time, and I again apologize for the absence. That's Sam Garrett's. So thank you for your time.
Hi, Becky D'Angelo, 505 State Street. So I've noticed that there seems to be like an inverse proportion of the people who walk on the street who think it's safe, and the people who don't walk on the street and think it's not safe. So that's just an interesting thing that I've noticed, and that's not part of what I was going to say. But perhaps it's just a perspective thing. Like if you walk on it, you think it's safe. So, and there are a lot of people who do, and they're alive. So okay, anyway, so I'm surprised that it's a town/federal/regional priority. With all the other things that are going on, similar to what that gentleman said over there, that there are lots of things happening that we need to be paying attention to and putting money toward, and not just sure that this is the highest priority. If it's deemed that this is a dangerous corridor, shouldn't we undertake first order steps, like safety steps, like putting the bike shadows on the road and striping a lane on the road and doing all of those other first order, not expensive, not intrusive solutions to a problem if there is? I mean, that should be at least first order. And then like share the road signage and all that other stuff. It will be good for some people, but it's very expensive, and I don't know the cost per person served or whatever, but metrics like that could be used. Anyway, it seems like an expensive and disruptive solution to, I don't know, maybe not a huge problem. That's it.
Hi, good evening. My name is Meg Teep. I'm at 115 Russet Drive. I'm not in the neighborhood, so again, apologies. I use Mike as my cover on that statement. But I did start driving my son to lakes this year for preschool, and what I will say is I've been incredibly impressed with that community and the number of people, like Melissa had said earlier, that actually do take the advantage of the sidewalk, the short sidewalk there. What scares me as a driver of those roads when I'm bringing my child to school is how unsafe it is for the crossing across Valley Shores. A lot of people don't even know to stop because the three-way stop sign on Little Meadow is very difficult. People don't know how to drive that road very well. So I would at least implore everyone to look at that section from Nut Plains to the sidewalk as an absolute priority. And then I totally agree. The more sidewalks you have, we will be using them. I am a family with 2 small children. We want to bike. We want to walk. Please keep asking us, and please keep the conversation open. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Schmidt at 140 Wild Rose. I'm also not in the neighborhood, but I'm here to speak for 2 groups who can't. One is something that Peter had mentioned. I witnessed one of the fatalities, bicycle fatalities, 3 years ago, and it's one of those things when you see someone lying lifeless that has been hit by a car, you cannot ever remove that image from your mind. So I will always come to meetings like this and stand up and support bike pedestrian safety because I have no other course of action because I cannot get that person's life back. And luckily, I guess I was not the car that hit this person, but the car too. I mean, I can't imagine the life that was ruined on both sides of the equation here. And I'm also here because I have friends who are families who live in the Valley Shores area, neighborhoods, and Tupelo, and they can't be here tonight because like my husband's doing for me tonight, he's putting the kids to bed. And we had to arrange this ahead of time, and it was actually a big ordeal. And my friends who live up there, they cannot be here tonight to speak. So I said I would come and I would speak and say that the families that I've spoken to are very much in favor of this. And I want to put a plug out for Wild Rose. I would love this in front of my house. I would welcome this in front of my house. We're the Sam Hill neighborhood and Mulberry Point neighborhoods are 1 mile from town and 1 mile from A.W. Cox. We cannot walk. We can't bike. And when you try to jump into the shoulder, it's leaves and brush and stone wall on Water Street. And I don't know what the solution is, but I'm saying that we will walk, and we do walk when we can on Sunday mornings when it's not so busy with the roads. But if you build it, we will come. We're trying to use it. We're trying our best. And if there is a sidewalk or something, either to the elementary school or to the green, it will be used, just like I know the Lakes community would do the same. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Kevin Dennehy, 7 Hampton Court. And what I wanted to say is that whatever concerns there are about this specific project, whatever important questions have to be answered, there are also really important opportunities that cannot be cast aside and ignored. I appreciate the importance of retaining the rural character of the community. It's one of the main reasons my wife and I moved here with our 2 sons. But this is also about access to the town's really valuable assets, like Guilford Lakes, like the hiking areas, the playgrounds. We live about 100 yards as the crow flies from Guilford Lakes. But for all intents and purposes, while we can hear the children outside during recess through the trees, for all intents and purposes, for our children, the school is inaccessible. We just can't walk there. It's completely unsafe. So I think this plan, if it can come together in a way that makes sense, can improve safety, strengthen the sense of neighborhood, indeed help achieve that rural sentiment that people are talking about, and give us another reason to get out of the car.
Hi, my name is Sharon Vergalta. I live at 540 Nut Plains Road. I grew up in a neighborhood where we did walk to school. The sidewalks were 15 feet into the yards. I don't understand when everybody's talking about letting their kids walk to school, that 6 feet on the side of a road where people are going too fast and they're too distracted, 6 feet is going to make a difference. You're going to let your little kids walk to school when the road is only 6 feet wider? I wouldn't.
Hi, Jim Silvestrini, 935 Nut Plains Road. We lived there for 28 years, and I never realized Guilford was such a dangerous place to live. You know, it seems like everybody here that's for this project isn't from Nut Plains Road or the area, right? Okay, there's 2 over here. And I think it's a crazy idea, and I think it should be dropped. That's it. Another thing, I don't think the 1.4 million is enough to do it anyways.
Hello, my name is Judith Pond. I live on 663 Nut Plains Road. I'm Charles Lee, going back to 1826. And I'm here because I oppose the walkway, and also because my neighbor, Maureen O'Connor, she's too ill to be here tonight, but she wrote this letter. And most of what she has written, others have said, those of you who are opposed to it. She talks about the trees, the beautiful homes, the stone walls. She does say that if it does go to the point of being approved, that the timber would be used as a pathway. Cinder, I should say, cinder, rather than the concrete. So if you would take that into consideration, if somehow it is passed. Many of you know Maureen. She's been here for about 40 years in Guilford. And thank you. And we have been here 28. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elaine Minori. I live at 110 Nut Plains Road. I'm concerned about the country atmosphere of Nut Plains Road. The reason I moved out of Brantford 30 years ago was to come to Guilford and the country. Love the country. Selfishly, I'm against this. I am on the west side of the street. We have a brand new driveway, brand new hardscape, and brand new landscaping, which I'm sure will be directly impacted. But more than that is our stone walls. That is New England. One of the reasons I moved to Connecticut in the first place. And the old trees, and certainly our historic homes. So I just want to go on record as being against this. Again, I agree with a lady earlier. Even a sidewalk with a 5 or 6-year-old on Nut Plains Road doesn't cut it. It's too dangerous. Traffic is much too fast. We can certainly address that tomorrow. They do speed on that road. I am a walker on that road, and I get off Nut Plains Road as soon as I can and walk up Tupelo. So I can appreciate what the walkers are up against, but I certainly don't hold with the argument that we'd have our children out on that street at this point in time. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Patricia Kleindienst. I live at 295 Clabbered Hill Road, and I've come tonight just to listen and observe, and I would rather not be the last speaker. Oh, good, I'm not, because I'm not from the neighborhood concerned, but I am quite concerned that once again the town of Guilford is being divided neighbor from neighbor by a vague, poorly conceived plan, and I think that we should think together as a town about a formal, professional bike ped safety study, not a committee made up of parties with something to gain on one side or another. The 2002 plan is not a working plan for us anymore. I think what we've learned from the SGT struggle, you're about to launch into again. I would hate to see this community, this part of Guilford, divided the way we all were a year ago. I've learned a great deal from that process, and I've been listening very closely to the passions expressed tonight. The prior to anything that should happen is that Guilford as a town, we as neighbors in a community, should be looking at how do we provide pedestrian and bicycle safety for the whole town, rather than fight it out, one small group against another. That's not constructive. It divides us, it wastes our time, and it wastes money. I just wanted to say that as a listener and as somebody who's been through this from another part of town already. We have everything to gain from working together and having an overall concept. What do we need as a larger community? I think we all want the same things, but I think this is a divisive process the way it's proceeding. We got money, we have an idea, it's vague, it's not well planned, but we're going to ask you all to come here and listen. That's not the way to do it. So I'm asking for something more considered, more concerned, that would calm rather than raise the hackles of our community. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Mullett. I live at 146 Tupelo Lane. I guess I started looking at this a while back because I do live on Tupelo. I do walk up and down State Street. I probably dodged many a car, maybe possibly driven by people in this room. Cars go way too fast. My children, who are 13 and 11, have gone through Adams. Would love to walk downtown in the summertime to go get an ice cream, go to the bookstore, go to Cilantro's, go to the marketplace, all the cool hip places that we have in Guilford that they like to go to in the summertime. I grit my teeth and I let them do it because that's part of growing up and being independent, but I do fear the whole time for their safety. I have been on that stretch of State Street coming up the hill numerous times when I've had to jump out of the way of a car. People are not paying attention. They're on their phones. I don't know what they're doing, but they're not paying attention. And I agree with the sentiment. Yes, people are not walking it now because it doesn't exist. Nobody wants to. It's not safe. But there are lots and lots of people in this community that want to increase the walkability. Guilford has so many things to offer everyone that comes to our town. And why is it that on a Saturday I have to drive my car with 4 bikes on it to Madison to ride my bikes? When I should be able to ride to town and spend money in my own town, not spend money in Madison. It doesn't make any sense. So I am strongly in support of this project. It's for the safety and well-being of our community. I think that should be a community value that we have, is the safety and health of our community. So thank you, and I'm strongly in support of this. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bob Howard. I live at 89 Valley Shore. I'm still comparatively new in town compared to the Dudleys and others, but I have been here a few years. In my background, I've been a selectman, not in this town, and a chairman of the planning board. So I have a little municipal experience. A question that has come to me as we've heard people for and against this proposal is some of the specifics involved here. Like, nobody has talked about the right-of-way that the town has for Nut Plains Road. Jim, 2-rod, 3-rod, what is it?
We've had it surveyed, it's in excess of, please.
Jim's had it surveyed, and
the right-of-way through most of the section from North Madison down to Goose Lane is in excess of 50 feet. What's 50 feet, the right-of-way. That is the distance that the town has. And most of the right-of-way is defined as the area available for road improvements or road activities. Your boundary lines and many of the properties are very much back away from the edge of the pavement. People don't realize that, but the town owns in 10 to 15 feet in a lot of places along Nut Plains Road. Now, we haven't had the area between Goose Lane and State Street surveyed, but if you ride along, there are places where the stone walls are way back, and that is part of the right-of-way. Other places, they're close, but if you look at both, if you look from one side to the other, that right-of-way is fairly wide through most of that section of road.
Goose Lane to North Madison, was that surveyed this summer?
Yes.
And those markers are...
What you see, no markers, you see are survey control points. That's where the surveyor goes out and he uses that as a reference point that he can measure. He can locate all the points along that right-of-way that are defined by deeds and subdivision plans and so forth. And we had that plan, that survey plan, will be completed by the end of this month.
Can a neighbor look at those flags and see where his property line is?
No, but if he came in, he can come in and we would certainly give him an opportunity to look at it.
And where would he go for that?
Go for the engineering department. So we'll have, by the end of this month, by the end of next week, we'll have a survey map of that whole length of road from North Madison Road down to Goose Lane.
What is the required width for the paving?
24 feet.
And who sets that requirement?
It's town ordinance. We have a 24-foot requirement as a minimum for this type of road. In fact, because we're going to put curbs in, we would, and those needed to control drainage. The road pavement will be 26 feet, but the curbing will be put on the 1 foot edge, so you'll have 24 feet curb to curb of roadway.
Within the right-of-way, then, it would seem that there might be space for realignment of the present pavement.
And we intend to do that.
Okay, nobody has said that so far. And
I thought that when I started, I said we planned to do both horizontal and vertical changes to the existing pavement.
Got it.
Okay.
With respect to the paving, will this be hard asphalt or chip seal?
Hard asphalt. It'll be a 2-course pavement. It'll consist of 3 inches of binder and maybe 1.5 inches of surface course.
It was our experience that when we did hard asphalt in lieu of chip sealing, that we think we picked up average road speed by about 10 miles an hour.
I don't believe that's true. I think people who drive these roads we do a lot of chip sealing. We did 10 miles of road this year. We did 10, 11 miles last year. And chip sealing really is a preservative. It's not a pavement. You don't build a chip seal pavement. It's like geniting a driveway, but we add stone to give it a better rideability. It's not a pavement per se. People drive whatever they feel comfortable driving. What we intended to do, as we said, is not only by placing this pathway, sidewalk, whatever you want to term it. We called it a path because it was convenient. But we want to put sharrows on the pavement. We want to put the sidewalk on the pavement. We believe that will have a calming effect on the traffic. Hope so. People do drive too fast. People have the cell phones. They have, they're in a hurry. We're all in a hurry. And I don't point my finger at anybody. I look in the rearview mirror and I see myself times driving. I drive a lot slower now than I did 20 years ago, but that's just a product of age.
What sorts of design parameters can be brought into play to reduce the speed of people driving on these roads? Well, the reason I ask is State Street went from being a bumpy little road to a speedway, and the suggested tap on brakes at the intersection now is really an intimidating one.
I would disagree with you in that it was a bumpy ride, and it was always the speed on that road existed. And that was the debate 20 years ago in this room here that we had when we were talking about improvements to that road. And people would say, "Oh, we should leave it the way it is. People are going to drive too fast." They don't drive any faster now than they did then.
Have we measured
One of the
that?
reasons we built that road, we had 3 fatalities on Little Meadow Road. When my kids were in high school, there was 3 kids killed along a section of road from, I would say it was basically from North Madison Road south to the intersection of State Street. No, there was 2 that were killed down near, just below the turnpike, and there was another one killed up near George Street.
Yeah, those were Valley Shore children.
Yeah, I remember. I coached with them in basketball.
Yeah. So are there things that we can do to reduce speed on the road?
The only thing that really works is enforcement. Having police out there. You can't introduce speed bumps. You're introducing a hazard in a roadway. If somebody loses control, the town would be responsible. You introduce those kinds of things in a heavily traveled road, you're introducing a hazard into the pavement. And I think and I've going way back, talked to the Attorney General, he says, we don't advise anybody to do that. If you have a quiet little street someplace where people don't speed, and you just want to kind of keep them a little slower, but anytime you have a through road, you're asking for lawsuits. And
Thanks.
of course,
We've gone over time and raised more questions than we've answered.
Thank you.
Hi, Sarah Sessions, 755 Nut Plains Road. I'm glad I followed you because I had some of those questions. As a resident of Nut Plains Road for 17 years now, I can say when we moved in, we only had 1 child. We did not have a fence around our yard. We live in an antique house. And luckily, we decided to put a fence around our yard because we realized quickly that we kind of had made a mistake that Nut Plains is a very busy road and very dangerous for our children. We were sad our children never learned to ride a bike for a long time because we had to take them to other areas. It's not a safe road. That said, I see both sides of this. I have concerns about my property. Our house is set back 15 feet off the road, so we are pretty close. I have concerns exactly how it might affect my property. Now knowing that the pathway is on the other side of the road, I do feel, sadly, a little bit better because it wouldn't be having people directly in front of my house. But I do see some benefits to it. I am a runner. I'm sure a lot of you have seen me every day outside running. It is very dangerous, very dangerous. I wear flashing lights. I wear a headlamp. I run usually at 5:30 in the morning, but sometimes later. I've been run off the road. I've been honked at. I've been sworn at. I mean, anything you can think of. People have actually stopped and screamed at me even though I am on the side of the road. So I would use it. I'm not going to lie. I would use this pathway. I would use it every single day. I am also the type of person who from my house walks to the library to return a library book. I would use it. My concerns are that as a resident of Nut Plains Road, we don't really know anything about it. Like, I don't know the details of the pathway. So I can't say I would approve of it or go for it if I didn't know the details and we weren't consulted, given that we have a house that is 200 years old. That is a concern. As for the road improvements, it would be nice if Lake Sessions in front of my house disappeared. I cannot tell you how many times I have been overcome by a wave, which is, I'm not lying. People will speed, I am at my mailbox, and I am covered from head to toe in a wave of water. This is how we live. The road needs to be fixed. One day they came and put stuff, but it seemed to have disintegrated. My kids could not even get on the school bus. For years, my kids could not get on the school bus because there was no place for them to cross over to get on the school bus. They had to pull forward where there wasn't enough room. So we've been at a disadvantage for years until my kids started driving. So that said, I am at this point, I would like to hear more about it. I would use it and appreciate it, but I'm also very, very, very concerned for my neighbors and for myself as to how it will affect our homes and how it will just affect our neighborhood. I mean, I love our neighborhood, and yes, I would like to see people slow down and appreciate the fact that there are those of us that live there and have children and pets, and, you know, I mean, it would be nice if people appreciated our neighborhood just a little bit more. So, thank you.
I'll make it quick. My name is Owen O'Neill. I live at 230 Stepstone Hill Road. I recently moved into Guilford. I recently moved back to Guilford, and was fortunate enough to move back into the same neighborhood that I grew up in. I grew up in Valley Shore Drive. Moved here in the 70s, had to deal with riding in and out of town. It wasn't that bad then. There weren't the developments, Fence Rock wasn't there, the other developments around the Guilford Lakes area weren't there. The traffic has increased, but I'm not as concerned about the traffic in as much as I now have a stepdaughter who just started going to Adams, and having a sidewalk along that road would bring the community together, and I think it would be nothing but good for the town of Guilford. So I'm for it. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak tonight? Okay.
Will there be additional meetings like this before we break ground on that section between State and Bruce Lane?
Yes. Okay, that's if we break ground, okay? We haven't decided yet, okay? And more than likely, there will be a new Board of Selectmen. So, okay, when we get to that point. And you will be rid of me by then. So, okay. Yes, sir.
Is the section from North Madison Road to Spruce Lane getting rebuilt no matter what?
Are you talking about the street portion or the sidewalk? You want to ask that question again?
Yes, sir. From North Madison Road down to the cemetery, that's going to get rebuilt. Whether it's half or not is up for discussion, but it's going to get rebuilt.
The street portion, not the sidewalk. Yeah. Okay.
That's definitely going forward. We need to do it. We have to get rid of Lake Sessions there.
And there's one thing I think we can all agree upon. When the town builds roads, they do it the right way. Okay, we do it the right way. Okay, thank you. And speaking about rebuilding roads, I have to editorialize about one comment that was made tonight. Please forgive me for saying this, but when there's a misstatement of fact, I will correct it. I think Mr. Freeze, is he still here? We are not over budget on Long Hill Road. I know this is the campaign season, the silly season, whatever you want to call it. I've been through half a dozen of them. Long Hill Road is a federally funded project, 80%. It's a bid project. We have a locked contract. It can't go over cost. Keep that in mind, okay? So what you hear out there, if you have any questions, give Jim or I a call about that project. It is not over budgeted. Is the press here? I hope the press is here. It's on tape, okay? Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the selectmen. The selectmen have anything to add tonight? No? Call?
I'd just like to talk quickly about the process. One comment tonight was that the selectmen have already made up their minds about this project, and that's not true. Another concern by one speaker was that these issues divide our town. And I don't think that we're so divided. I think that people appreciate having a forum like this or a public meeting like this so that they can ask questions, so that they can voice their opinions, so that they can be part of a decision that the Board of Selectmen might in some future time make. And I think this process is very important. There aren't many towns that really offer this kind of process. And I think the more people that we have that come out, that participate, that speak, that question, I think the more strength that gives all of you with those people who have to make the decision. And I'll only have another month and a half to make any of these decisions, but I think going forward, it's very, very important that all of you participate in these public hearings and demand these public hearings and these public sessions. Because we are going to have a lot of decisions going forward, like tonight's issue. Guilford is a very old community. A lot of our streets are very old. Before my neighbor McElhenney came up and populated the Podunk, no, what street do you live? Yeah, Norton Town. It was a dirt road. The school bus never went on it. We used to go parking up there, but other than that, there was nothing. And then we had a bunch of these newcomers that came, and we had to pave it. But, you know, a lot of our streets are very narrow. We did have, and we have an ongoing issue with the Greenway Trail and Leeds Island. How do you kind of develop a 50-foot right-of-way through Leeds Island when you'd have to destroy Leeds Farm and granite walls, etc. We had an issue that came to us just recently about putting a 4-lane track through our town and through Stony Creek. For those of us who take the train and go to the brand new station in Branford, how do you go from a two-track station to a 4-track station when they haven't even finished the 2-track station yet in Branford? I mean, we're going to have issues like this all the time. So the process is important, and your participation is important, and you're demanding that we have you here and that we explain things to you and that we listen to you. This process is going to be more and more important as we go forward. So I thank you for coming, I thank you for participating, and I thank you for demanding that the Board of Selectmen continue to listen to you and to hear you. Thank you.
First of all, I want to apologize for being late, but 91 was a parking lot tonight. Literally a parking lot. I agree with everything Carl said, and I'm glad that people were here to express their opinion because I think it's important. I have been on record as saying that I think the town ought to investigate a study as to all of the options for pedestrian and bicycle pathways. I've been on the Board of Selectmen for almost 8 years. We keep getting requests, issues from various neighborhoods. We take them one at a time. I'd like to be able to, and I won't, like Carl and Joe, I probably won't be here when this is done, but I would like to be able to have a legitimate, independent study led by an outside group to give us a real study of, don't you laugh at me, Jim Portley, of the needs of the entire town so we can consider the entire town as a whole, not section by section.
Okay, it's getting late. One more comment I want to make is that I always consider the first selectman's job, prime job, is the protection and safety of the citizens of Guilford, and from day one, that was my first consideration. So this is important to me, and like Carl and Gary, we're going to hand this off in about 2 months, I think, whatever it is. I haven't got that calendar yet. In the Army, we used to call it a short timer's calendar, but I haven't got it yet. But it's a concern when the folks over in Oxbow and State Street and the other, not Plains West, came to us. I was in support of this, of that section, and then the section down by Lakes. But it has to be studied a little bit more. Jim and I were very successful in getting the $1.4 million funding, and I'm proud of getting that funding for the project. So obviously I want to move forward with this project, but I do agree with Gary that we've got to do a little bit more study to get it right. So thank you very much for coming, and I think we had a great meeting, and good night. Take care.